To me, Global Reach Out is inspiring.
It's connecting with God, reaching out to the world, and impacting life.
The stories that shared is so personal and it deeply impacted me.
Global Reach Out to me is reach out to the truth.
Connecting hearts, connecting lives. You're listening to Global Reach Out.
To me, Global Reach Out is inspiring.
It's connecting with God, reaching out to the world, and impacting life.
The stories that shared is so personal and it deeply impacted me.
Global Reach Out to me is reach out to the truth.
Connecting hearts, connecting lives. You're listening to Global Reach Out.
Hello friends, a very warm welcome to Global Reach Out. And thank you for staying with us on this series, Oasis of God's Grace.
Episode 5, Models of Grace. In the scripture, we find examples of God's grace upon His people. So, I'm going to use Genesis 1 to 11 to illustrate how God demonstrates grace. Genesis 1 to 11, we find that grace begins as early as in the first 11 chapters of Genesis. Genesis 1 to 11 comprise 5 basic plot lines. They are the creation, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah and the flood, and the Tower of Babel. Now, how did God display His grace in these 5 stories? 1. Creation story. In the creation story, we are told God created the world out of nothing and humanity out of dust. He did it not because He had to, but because He wanted to, for His pleasure. Neither did God create the world and humanity because He was lonely. This is a common misconception. Why should God be lonely when within the Trinity there is intra and intercommunication with other created celestial beings? Human beings and not celestial beings are the apex of God's creation. God created the world out of His goodness and pleasure. The world came into existence because of grace, no more, no less. Adam and Eve. In the story of Adam and Eve, God placed men and women in the Garden of Eden, permitted them to eat from any fruit tree in the garden except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The dire consequences of disobedience would be immediate death. However, through the temptation of the serpent, the couple fell into sin and ate forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Instead of an immediate death sentence, they were given a reprieve. They were driven out of the Garden of Eden. It was definitely a display of God's grace that they did not die in an instant death. What baffles me is that in spite of their disobedience, God still took time to make clothes for them, to cover their nakedness. Was there not grace? In addition, outside the garden, Adam and Eve still had access to God. That too was grace. God drove the couple out of garden after their act of disobedience. This could be seen as an act of grace, because if He did not, they would have lived forever, but with all the defects and corruption that accompanied the fall. Cain and Abel. In the story of Cain and Abel, Cain rejected God's warning and killed Abel in cold blood. Yet God spared Cain's life. God even protected him by putting a mark on him with a warning that if any were to touch him, sevenfold vengeance would be meted out. Cain was blessed with a family that became quite renowned. After Abel died, God's grace enabled Eve to bear another child. Noah and the flood. In the story of Noah and the flood, God, instead of destroying everyone, spared Noah and the family. Noah became a drunk, but was not punished. God preserved the human race through Noah. Tower of Babel. In the story of the Tower of Babel, God did not destroy human beings for their godlike ambition. Instead, He chose to disperse them. God could have said, "Come, let us go down there with lightning and thunder to destroy them." But He did not. Instead, He said, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language." Grace in action. We see the grace of God in the gift of children to Adam and Eve, the protection of Cain, the rescue of Noah and the animals. We also see God exercising his grace in the renewal of the creation of the flood. The breakup of a united community resulted in dispersion rather than destruction. These stories climax in the call of Abraham, progenitor of Israel, by God with his promise, I shall make you a great nation. I shall bless you and make your name so great that you will be used in blessings. All the people of the earth will wish to be blessed as you are blessed. The theme of grace in the midst of judgment is seen when there is a spread of sin on man's part. There is the corresponding spread of grace on God's part. Significantly, God always intervenes in the midst of act of sin and the act of punishment. God's judgment is meted not according to the measure of sin. Where a community is concerned, judgment is undifferentiated, although for individuals it is different. Example, Adam, Cain, Eve, and the Babelites. From Eden to Babel, there is an avalanche of sin and a widening of the chasm between God and man. For disobedience, murder, lust, total corruption, violence, and disruption of humanity, God metes out punishment that is just and right, but not overwhelming. No matter how drastic human sin becomes, even to the point of destroying creation and what God had made good, God's grace always comes to the rescue. God's grace preserves and saves humankind from the full consequences of sin. God gives the people a second chance. Example, Adam, Eve, Cain, and others. The theme of grace in the midst of judgment culminates in the Tower of Babel. Had it not been from grace, the Babelites could have been destroyed. Dispersal of nation can be understood positively as fulfilling the command of God in Genesis 1:28, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. We encounter the generation section of Shem again, and it suggests hope for mankind and climaxes with the family of Abraham becoming the promised seed. The theme of grace in the midst of judgment continues in the remainder of the books of the Pentateuch, that is the first 5 books of the Bible. The chosen nation Israel comes only later in the Pentateuch. In the latter part of the Old Testament, Israel seeks to be a community in the midst of other communities. Moses and Israel are recipients of God's grace, although their sin and rebellion caused the nation of Israel a 40-year delay in reaching the promised land. Nevertheless, the new generation finally enters the promised land under Joshua. When things seem hopeless, there is a light from God. The grace of God is always at work, in spite of human wickedness. God has chosen to work with humans instead of destroying us. The world breathes and families procreate because God's grace is real and amazing. Although human sinfulness spreads, the grace of God spreads too. There is always grace in the midst of judgment. The justice of God is the ground of punishment, but the mercy of God is the ground of his grace. Both justice and grace are innate character traits of God. Like two sides of a coin, you cannot have one without the other. Both qualities are in sync. God cannot be God if we eliminate one of them. Joseph, Genesis 37-50. Joseph was one of the 12 sons of Jacob. His father loved him more than any of his brothers and made him a long robe with sleeves. Joseph's brother became jealous, hated him. Joseph antagonized his brothers when he shared about his dream in the field, where he saw his sheaf rose and stood upright, while the rest of the sheaves gathered round and paid homage to the sheaf. He later narrated another dream, like the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to him. The brothers were incensed and hated him. They threw him into a pit and sold him as a slave to Egypt. Later, Joseph rose in the rank and riches. When Joseph was falsely accused, he was imprisoned for 2 years. In no time, God raised him up to the highest position because Pharaoh in Egypt, in order to save the people from the prolonged famine. Years later, Joseph's brothers met him again. When they recalled what they had done to him, they became so fearful that they volunteered to be his slaves. Joseph could have been vengeful and given them a taste of their own medicine. Instead, he forgave them, embraced them, and took care of them. He practiced grace on them. He gave them what they needed, not what they deserved.
We will close here today. Please stay tuned with Global Reach Out, and let's meet again next week. Goodbye.
The program is proudly presented by Global Reach Out. We welcome you to share our live enriching webcasts with family and friends through our website, global-reachout.org. Let's reach out to bless more lives together. The program is proudly presented by Global Reach Out. We welcome you to share our live enriching webcasts with family and friends through our website, global-reachout.org. Let's reach out to bless more lives together.